It was supposed to be just another fun Florida night out, when suddenly all hell breaks loose in this gay Orlando nightclub. A crazed gunman comes in, and few patrons get out alive. In no time, 49 people gunned down and 53 wounded. Lives changed forever, including the club's owner. So what does the owner have to say about this horrific night? She believes the gunman wasn't specifically targeting gay people, and that Pulse was likely not his first choice. Where was she when the bullets started flying? And what's it like to own a club where one of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history took place? One-on-one with Pulse owner Barbara Poma.
Okay, we're on. It's nice to see you in person again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's awesome. I think last time I saw you, first time I met you, was in a swimming pool.
It was.
Do you remember?
It was. I do.
I think you were Miss Prim and Proper, and I had maybe a couple beers in me or something, and I just started talking. But I think you were having fun that day.
I tried.
Enjoying yourself. That was in the Bahamas.
It was.
That was fun. That was a while back. Well, let's talk about how we got to this point. Let's begin. I was thinking about you and being a business owner myself in the past and currently. How did you ever get into the nightclub business? If any business you're going to open up, I can't think of a harder business than opening up a nightclub.
It was. It wasn't part of our plan, my husband and I's plan. We were originally, local business owners of restaurants, and we had quite a few of them in Central Florida between Kissimmee and Orlando. And it just came about that one of our dearest friends was kind of his dream, and just thought this would be a great thing to do, and wanted to know if we wanted to do it together. And so when he approached my husband's like, "Well, do you want to do this, Barb?" And I was like, that sounds like fun. So it really was not something that we had set out to do, to open a nightclub in our lifetime, but it was something that just came to be.
So you had never been in the nightclub business prior to this, other businesses, as you said, but nothing specifically a nightclub.
No, Pulse was our first and only.
And did you set out for it to be a certain type of nightclub? And if so, why? What were you guys thinking? The theme and the goal of that? Sure,
it was. Pulse was really intentional. The design of it, the mission of it. Our business partner and I, we really wanted Pulse to be what we call the clean, beautiful space to be proud to bring your mother. Because historically, most LGBT bars were not. And so they were always, hidden away on the wrong side of the tracks or dark, seedy areas, never part of the mainstream of a city, or never something that people would be proud to bring their family to. And that's just something we wanted Pulse to be.
And then why a gay nightclub? What was the thinking behind that, and what was your tie to that even from the beginning?
Well, two ties to that. One is that I grew up with a gay brother, and who we lost to the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the early 90s. So when he died, I really lost part of myself. It was a community I grew up in that he raised me in and I loved, and it was really part of who I was. So when John died, I lost that connection. I sought doing a lot of philanthropy work in the HIV world. And so as life progressed, I got married, and it just so happened that my husband met a friend, someone at work at the restaurants who became one of our dearest, closest family friends. And he so happened to be gay, and so it was just like this great connection that we made. And he was quite a bit like filling a hole in my heart that I had missed for so long. And so when he came up with this idea to do the bar, it was just like it was a perfect match.
How old was John when he passed?
He was 26, almost 27.
Was that here in Florida?
Yeah, he passed in South Florida where we lived.
Okay. And so that was the motivating factor to open up a gay nightclub, if you will.
On our end.
On your end. Yeah, you had a personal mission to make a nice, safe place and cool place for, to hang out. So then you opened that in what year was that?
I want to say 2004.
Okay. It's weird. I don't even know if you know this, but I was trying to go back to figure out how we have evolved with the LGBT community just in my lifetime. And then now I'm thinking about you and what you went through with your brother. It wasn't that long ago, just here in Florida, I think it was like around 2000, I might get the year wrong, but 2003, 2004, that same-sex sexual activity was illegal. Mm-hmm. Folks, illegal until like 2003, 2004. In other words, it was against the law to have any type of sexual activity with the same sex.
It's true. I think, of course, there are many antiquated laws that sit on our books, whether it be in this state or around, in our country. But I just, we're still talking about that gay man can't give blood. So there are lots of antiquated laws sitting around that, some of us in our lifetime have been grateful to see things change and to see the shift. When my brother was sick with HIV back in the late 80s and early 90s, it was they considered a gay epidemic. It was just, we lost a whole generation of men. So it was, coming out of the AIDS epidemic, coming through now to marriage equality. We're just seeing so much movement finally in our country, both socially and through our legal system.
I remember that time really, really well. And this is a weird story. It just made me think of this. It was like in the 80s, like maybe 86, 87. I was in Long Beach, California, was visiting some friends, and I had a fever or something. This is no joke. So I went, as stupid young person, went to the emergency room for a fever, And I remember the doctor coming in, and he walks in, and he closes the door, and he goes, all right, I just want you to be honest with me. Oh, yeah, sure. Are you gay? What? He goes, well, we've been seeing this thing coming in with a lot of men, single men, who come in and have a fever. And so he had seen so much of it that, and he goes, yeah, he goes, I don't mean to ask that to you, but I've been inundated with this problem here in California, mm-hmm. where people are just walking into emergency rooms, and then, it turned out to be part of a huge epidemic, in California and the rest of the world. But it was like, no, what are you talking about, dude? Just give me some amoxicillin and I'm out of here, So it was a strange time if you were around when people were getting AIDS. It was scary. People were freaked out. People were afraid to use the same bathroom. People were, just afraid, kissing someone and stuff. And then we've obviously learned later that this was all ridiculous and no need to fear. But people were really fearful in that era. And
they should have been. There was a lot of unknown, and people were dying quickly. And we saw that firsthand, especially with my brother when he was in the hospital. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But remember when they showed that the nurses they left the food trays,
yeah.
and that happened. I'll never forget. I didn't realize other people had that happen to them, because when it happened to us, I remember we showed up to the hospital one morning and I was like, why is your food out here? And I realized the tray had been untouched, because I thought, well, you're not hungry? And he was like, no one brought me any food. And I realized they didn't want to come into the room. And so as John progressed and was in the hospital more, I remember one time I was just kind of laying in the hospital bed with him, just hanging out like a brother and sister would do. And the nurse flung open the door and screamed at me to get out of his bed. I was like, why? We're just hanging out watching TV. And she was like, no, you have to get out. I'm like, I'm not getting out, and we're fine. I'm not gonna catch AIDS by laying in bed with my brother.
How did you have that confidence? You were living through the same era I was, and everyone was scared. How come you didn't get fearful of that? How come you knew not to get worried about it?
Because I wasn't sharing bodily fluids with him, and that's what they had told us at the time, was the way you could contract it. And so I just was hanging out with my brother, and I just wanted to do that, and I don't know, I wasn't fearful of it.
Wow. That's brave, because a lot of people did not feel that way through the 80s and through much of the 90s, to this day, actually. Sure. But it's gotten better that people have finally realized that, okay, I'm not going to get this, and it's not transmittable just by social contact. So then let me go back. So to watch your brother go through this, is it, not to get too personal, is it just an awful way to pass? Is it at that time, was it just a horrible way to go?
Sure. I mean, I think that, I don't know this for every AIDS patient, but for my brother, it was really painful. I mean, it was watching organs shut down one by one, so it took a long time, and so it was hard to know you were dying and nothing you could do about it. Whether your kidney started shutting down or your liver started shutting down, and he had pneumonia, so his breathing was was very raspy and gargly, and so it was not an easy way to pass. But I have also seen people who've passed from cancers, and cancer is a horrible way, long, prolonged times. It's pretty much the same at the end. So it was of course hard to watch when it's your sibling.
How did your mom and dad get through that? Were they there by his side through the whole?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole family was. I think that we all were functioning in our own little silos at the time, because I can't really tell you how my sister did it, or my mom did it, or my dad did it, or even my younger brother, who I definitely probably needed more attention from all of us. He was so young at the time.
How old was he?
Well, he's 9 years younger than I am, so
Okay.
he must have been about 13.
Okay.
And so I think everyone just dealt with it in their own way. But my mother was this pillar of strength. She was a true warrior, and she took care of my brother morning, noon, and night. And she was with him. It was she and I who was with him when he took his last breaths.
Are both your parents still alive today, or your dad passed, right?
Yeah, my dad passed 9 months after my brother, same year.
Not the best year in the world, huh?
Nope.
Makes you a stronger person, right?
Sure does.
Yeah.
Sure, loss always does.
Yeah. Okay, so then you're opening up this nightclub. You're going to make it an LGBT-friendly nightclub. Does a gay nightclub have to be different in terms of, is it compared to a straight club, the way you design it? Or I know the music's always better. I do know that.
No, I mean, I really just think it's how you would build any other nightclub. I mean, we wanted it, like I said, we wanted it to be beautiful. We wanted it to be trending forward in design. We wanted it to be, have great lighting effects, but not because it was a gay bar, just because we wanted it to be, bring something beautiful to Orlando.
Right. Is there a lot of other gay clubs, a competition at that time? Was there quite a few clubs?
Yeah, there still are. I think the same clubs are open today that were open when we opened, and a few have come and gone in between. Orlando's got an amazing LGBTQ community, and so I think that what made Pulse a little bit unique was that we weren't just. I mean, we were LGBTQ identified as a nightclub, but it was a place for everyone. I mean, there were, allies and came all the time. It was a very comfortable place for the straight community as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a good business to be in? Maybe I want to open up a nightclub. I might do that after our talk here. I don't know. Is it a good business?
It's not an easy one. It's
No?
hard. No.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a hard one.
Now, did you ever sleep behind the bar and do that kind of stuff?
No.
No?
No, I was not. I was
smart. Now, see, that just tells me right there how smart you are. See,
Yeah,
I've been the
no.
guy where I got to work behind the bar. I got to work the front door. I got to be the DJ.
No. I was your, our partner, he was there at night. We had a full management staff. We had
Right.
managers who managed the daily business, and he came in at night to be kind of a great host for everyone. I did all of the business work during the day, whether that be any of the accounting and banking and hiring. And so we did a lot of that kind of stuff during the day, manager meetings and ordering. So I was your day girl. I had 3 small children. So I only came to Pulse on special event nights in the beginning.
Wow. Well, that's a lot of work. 3 kids and then doing all the accounting work. And then you had other businesses at the time too, right? Mm-hmm. How do you do all that? I don't get that.
You manage it. I mean, you wake up, you get your kids either off to school or packed up to come with you. You go do all your work, and then you finish it up by carpool time, and you go home and you do mom stuff. So that's how my life pretty much ran.
When you own a business like that, do you see? This is why I'd fail. I'd be so paranoid. People ripping me off, bartenders stealing money. This person. Do you have to worry about that kind of stuff, or managers take care of it? Can you trust the manager? Who do you trust in a business like that?
You have to trust your staff, and you have to trust your managers. You hope you hire good people. Does it happen? Happens every day in the hospitality business, restaurant and bar. But you try to minimize your loss as much as possible. But you have to accept that it's going to happen. So, whether intentional or by mistake,
Yeah,
that's just a fact.
Now, were there up until 2016, were there ever problems, like typical nightclub problems? I suppose people get in a fight, or is that normal? I mean, when you own a nightclub, or was there not much of that?
There just wasn't much of that.
No?
No, there wasn't much of that. I'm sure it happens, but Pulse, it really wasn't a frequent, it just wasn't happening that much at Pulse.
Gay people just don't want to get in fights. They're just nice people. They're just nice.
I think everyone was just having a good time. I think it was just an atmosphere. I don't know whether it's gay or straight. I mean, like I said, it was a great mix of both.
Yeah.
Of all people there, but it just seemed to be a really happy place.
Yeah, yeah. It seemed that way. It's actually not far from where we're recording this. It's really right up the street. And I got to be honest with you. The morning of 2016, June 12th. I was with my son in the car, and I was going to a particular bagel shop right down that street there. And I was coming down Orange Avenue, which is, for people around the rest of the country, that's kind of a main drag that leads you into downtown and where Pulse is located. And there were policemen all over blocking the streets. You couldn't go down Orange Avenue. I was like, huh? It was weird. It's like, okay, So I think somehow I was able to maneuver around, go around, and still didn't know what was going on. Had no clue. And then I thought, when I get home, I'll turn on the news. And of course, the story, as you know, was everywhere. Now, this was probably 9, 10 o'clock in the morning till I found out. I'm sure many people have told you where they were that day. Where were you that morning? I would assume you were sound asleep, right?
No, actually, I was on vacation with my daughter who had just graduated high school. It was our mother-daughter trip, and we were there with the 2 other mothers and daughters. We were in Cancun, Mexico, and so we were still wide awake, and I received that phone call about 2:06 in the morning, so 4 minutes or so after the shooting began.
Who called you?
My manager, one of the managers on duty, who'd gotten out quickly.
And what does he say to you? What does he tell you? I mean, I can't...
It was just a lot of screaming. It was a lot of someone shooting inside, and there's shooting. Was just kept saying the word shooting. There's just lots of shooting, and so it took me a long time to figure out what he was really saying to me, because nothing like that ever happened. It just didn't make any sense to me. And of course, I thought, well, maybe it was just like maybe a couple got into an argument, and maybe it was a revenge or a jealousy thing. But that was clearly not what was happening, and so it didn't take it long for it to hit CNN. So I was trying to get a flight out of Cancun to come home. Couldn't get out until I think 7 or so in the morning, whenever the first flight was. Sure. So I just stayed up and, of course, was on the phone all morning long and watching it unfold on CNN.
So then he calls you, and you hear this, and you have to be almost like confused because, and then you don't know the seriousness of it. And like you said, is this some sort of argument or whatever? And then does it all of a sudden appear on television down in Cancun? And all of a sudden you hear the name of this nightclub, or is that how it works? Or
I mean, I understood it long before it hit the TV set, because I was on the phone on the ground with people. Like when I hung up with that manager, I called another one, and so I found out where he was, and so I was just really getting updates about the staff the entire from 2 a.m. on to 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. But it took, and I'm not sure what time it hit CNN, the broadcast that I was watching in Cancun, but I knew exactly what it was. I knew what the counts were looking like and what was happening the entire way through it.
Oh my gosh, that has to be so strange. And then you're sitting at the airport knowing you've got to get back, and then what is this? What am I dealing with? So then you get back to Orlando. You go from the airport to home, I would assume?
Yes, went straight home.
And then how do you begin to sort that out? What do you do? Do you remember that day, or?
Oh yeah, you don't really know what to do, because nothing like that has ever happened before, and so you really trying to wrap your brain around it. You're obviously, you're in shock, and you've cried from 2:30 in the morning until you arrive here. You're just in this complete perpetual sobbing and shock mode, trying to figure out what's just happened. But when I got home, my husband, of course, was there, And
How was he doing?
he was just as much of a mess as I was. But he wanted to figure out what do we do next. I mean, who do you call? And so we just started calling friends and seeing, what should we do, and had to hire a crisis management person to help us figure out what to do with that and know that even existed in the world.
How do you find that person? Do you just look them up?
No, you just ask your neighbors. And people just knew who to call, and we called a local person here, and she has, she helped us through the process, really, minute by minute. She would show up at my doorstep in the morning, and just help us, guide us through every day.
Oh my gosh, thank God for that person, because I don't know that I would know what to do. I think I'd be really lost, and I think I probably would have ran down to the club and stood out there and just gotten in the way and not knowing what to do.
Yeah, our instincts were to go straight to the club, but I was told not to do that. And then when Sarah came along, she just said, she's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go there." And she's like, "You shouldn't go there." I mean, it was just Media Central. It was, the FBI had already, they had already marked it off as a crime scene. I couldn't get closer than anybody else could get, and it would just been a circus to try and get there. So, as much as I wanted to be there, that's where my instinct wanted me to be. It's not where I was told to go.
Then I got to imagine it's probably by the time you landed, the media is calling you like nonstop, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like from around the world.
Yes.
And then at least you can refer them to the crisis management person, correct?
After that, yeah. I was told before I even got on the plane, just do not answer your phone until you land. Like, don't answer your phone if you don't know who it is. So I just stopped answering my phone. And then my daughter, who was, ironically, I left her in Cancun with the other mothers. I don't know what I was thinking. I just had to get home. They started calling her. And so I told her, stop answering your phone. So the whole family was notified to stop, answering. If you don't recognize, if it's not a saved number, don't answer. So.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you think about, even to this day, this is one of the biggest stories in the world. And people are trying to reach you. And then you sit there and think, even if you did talk, what would you say to them? You know what I mean? Like, I think you'd only do more harm to yourself than trying to help them out. Don't you agree?
I don't know what they would have asked me. I don't know how I could possibly answered anything. I didn't know any more than they knew. And ironically, I think because this was the first time that a terrorist attack or a mass shooting happened on private property, people didn't really know how to handle that. They didn't know when to include me and when not to. Most things happened without my knowledge. Lots of things happened without my knowledge because people didn't even think about the property owners at the time. So we just were trying to get through every day. It literally was just get through each day one by one by one. And we would just get to bed. If we went to bed, I paced my house for weeks. Like, I couldn't even get into my bed. But a couple of times I remember my husband and I just saying, "Can you believe this happened at our place? Like, this happened at our place." It was just this crazy, you just couldn't wrap your brain around it. You just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I would have that conversation all the time. This has to be happening to someone else. It just doesn't happen to me.
Right.
It happens to the other guy. It had to be weird. It seems like your husband was able to maintain a lower profile. Was that always true? Did he just want to stay away from the media completely? I feel like I just didn't see him much. I saw you a lot. Yeah,
mostly because when it came to Pulse, my husband wasn't really involved in Pulse on a daily or regular basis, other than just helping, when I needed him to. It wasn't something that he did. It was always considered my hobby. He called it a very expensive hobby, but he was generous and kind to me. So, it really just, the staff, of course, all knew him because he was always part of everything we did, but it's just wasn't his passion. It wasn't what, he was involved with on a daily basis.
It's amazing when you look back, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but you look at the timeline of all the events, the police, the FBI, these people responded amazingly. You look at when that first call came in, 2:04, or I don't know, I might get this wrong, but you can correct me. These people were on top of this immediately. Am I wrong?
No, they did a great job with it. With what they were dealt, at the time of night, the darkness of a nightclub, what was happening in there. No one thinks that there's going to be a terrorist attack in your city. Especially don't think it's going to be happening at a gay bar in the corner of Cayley and Orange Avenue. So I think that, our response team they truly were amazing. They did everything they could have done with what the knowledge they had.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I mean, they were here within minutes and responding to it. And then, you have to remember, I mean, I know you've told this story many times, and we don't need to go through all the details, but when you look at the timeline of when the Orlando Police Department got here and what they did at that time, and then they had to worry about a hostage situation and possibly bombs strapped to a body. I mean, I just think of like law enforcement going, okay, we got to act slowly, then we got to act quickly. Mm-hmm. Do we go in? Do we not go in? I don't know how you make those decisions. I know you try to calculate them as best as you can, but everything I look at, I think these people did a fantastic job.
I think they did too. I mean, I can't tell you what it was like to be them. I can't tell you how they're trained. I can't tell you what that process that you were just describing, like what do they think? I have no idea of any of that. And quite honestly, it's not like I've sat back and studied the police reports to know how long, every minute by minute, because I really don't want all those details in my brain. But I've met many of them since, and they are just true civil servants. I mean, they just wanted to protect their people. They wanted to protect their community. They wanted to save as many lives as they could. You hear their stories and what they live with and what they had to see and smell and go through. They're changed.
Yeah, I don't like to second guess like police officers on a lot of this stuff, because I often even when I see other situations on television and stuff, I mean, I just can't imagine you're trying to make decisions in a split second, and like you said, it's dark, you can't quite see, and who is the person? I don't even know that, like, if I came in the nightclub, I'd be able to identify who the shooter is. You know what I mean? It's so chaotic. So anyways, I look back on that, and I think these people did an amazing job, and it was horrible, but I think they did a lot of right things when they had to go in and stuff. So
I agree.
Congratulations to them. Did you know many of your customers, in the sense of, would you see? I know you weren't there every night, right. So I get it. You weren't hanging out in the club or anything. Did you know any of the victims? Did you remember running into those people over time, or?
Just a couple that I knew from staff members, if they were friends of the staff, so they would come to certain events I'd be at, whether they would actually be at Pulse or not. They could have been at someone's home. So they were just a couple that I knew personally.
Yeah. I imagine you've met a lot of the victims' families over time since then, and I imagine you've gotten to know them to some degree, and the heartache and the just horribleness that they've had to go through. So
it's definitely part of the mission of what I do now at the foundation with the work, but really just getting to know the family members and the mothers, the fathers, sisters, brothers, cousins. I mean, I've just met so many of them, and hearing their stories and learning about their sons and daughters and seeing their pictures and videos. I'm a mom. I have never lost a child. I can only imagine what that could possibly feel like. And these women are amazing that they can get out of bed every day and face the world without their child. And so there's nothing we can do to bring their child back, to fill that hole in their heart. But I've really considered it an honor to get to know them, and honoring their child's life every day is just important work.
Well, you do know what it's like to lose someone, though, with your brother prior to all this, so you certainly can relate. I mean, I know they're two different events, but you can certainly relate what it's like losing people. Sure, but a child's different. Yeah. Every loss is different, so. Yeah. So tell me about the foundation, where we're at with Pulse. I think a lot of people that don't live in Florida don't necessarily get by there. Where are we headed with it? Well, we've had an interim memorial design that's been up since last year of May, that people now, when they come visit, because when the property was given back to me, it was given back to me from the FBI with a chain link fence, crime scene. And so people were still visiting hundreds a day. And so we wanted to make it a more respectful place as we went through the international design competition phase. So that's been there since last May. We have just completed the international design competition, which was a true testament to how the world still responds and thinks about what happened at Pulse.
we put out an RFQ to the world, to architects around the world, and asked them to put together the best team they could think of. And so they did, and we had 68 submissions from 18 different countries. And so we had to narrow those teams down to 6. We had a committee who did that, and so we narrowed it down to 6 teams who all submitted their design concepts, which were actually here in Orlando. Were on display for public display for a week, a couple weeks ago, or last week or so. And then the jury came in on last Friday and took a vote. So we actually will be announcing the final design concept next Wednesday.
Wow.
And so that'll be unveiled. But was
So
really,
you know who it is?
I do.
Okay.
I do know who it is. But what was really interesting about the process of this design concept was, we at the foundation do everything, family first. So it's family, survivor, first responder. So the families had a full day to be with the designs privately, and then the next 2 days were for family, survivors, and first responders to come in and leave all their comments. We took all their comments, kept them separate, and so then when the community came in and left their comments, we compiled those. And then those people who went online and commented online compiled those. So the jury got, different sets of comments. And so they could really understand, if the families had a real aversion to one or a real passion for another. And so I think it made the 13 of us in that room really have a good understanding of what our families and first, stakeholders and our community really liked and didn't like, and what was important and what wasn't important. So it really was, even though there was 13 people who actually cast a vote, it really was community driven from the very beginning. So I'm excited.
So people understand this, where the shooting occurred. Mm-hmm. This is sort of a memorial, which it is right now, and anyone can walk up there and it'll remain as a memorial, and then the museum will be down the street.
Yes.
So people can picture this.
Right. So right where Pulse is, where the interim memorial is now, is where the permanent memorial will be. We've actually purchased property behind it, so it'll be more of an L-shaped. The memorial will be bigger than it is today. Down the street, down Cayley, going towards I-4, about a third of a mile, right in the corner of Cayley and Division. We've purchased property there to put the museum. And the museum will have a shuttle that goes in between. And then we're also extending your experience from Pulse down to Orlando Health. And we're calling that the Survivor's Walk, because it really was because Orlando Health was so close to the hospital, because their trauma team was so well trained. It was a level 1 trauma team that, it's very hard, or they're exceptional. Staff, and it's because they were so exceptional, because their proximity, that so many people lived. That number could have been much higher had the hospital been any further away. So, everyone who arrived in their doorsteps alive walked out alive. And so we feel like that people ran there. They were driven in trucks and cars, and however they got themselves to that hospital. So that journey to take that walk between Pulse and Orlando Health will become what we call our Survivor's Walk. And so it leaves it right at Lake Beauty, where they've also already have their memorial there as well. So it's really going to transform much of Cayley down to Orange and to the hospital, but it really becomes to tell the story of what happened, so that, we have to remember in 50 years, I won't be here to tell the story and be talking about it, and the museum and the memorial will do that.
Yeah, well, no, you're right about the hospital, because it is right around the corner from Pulse, and I've thought about that many times, about how lucky that was, for the fact that was right around the corner, because so many people could have probably passed on just being shuttled to a faraway hospital, or waiting for a helicopter or whatever it might be. So thank goodness it was right there, and the doctors and nurses and the crews there must have been just, what is going on? I mean, they must have just been overwhelmed, but did a fantastic job.
They did.
Did you get to meet a lot of them?
I've met some of them. Yeah, I met some of them.
Yeah. Did they tell you stories of what they? Yeah.
They do. Just their personal stories and what it means to them, how it affected them, how it changed them. I mean, it's just like the first responders and the police and the SWAT. Everyone thinks, well, that's their job. It's a doctor's job, nurse's job, and it's true. Their job is to save lives and to go in and help and protect, but there's just no way to come through that incident and not be changed and be affected. And so they have amazing stories.
It must have been like a MASH unit, I mean, literally like the TV show, where literally one person after another coming in, and I mean, are you just even having the staff to know, to get it done, the surgeries, and is amazing.
It was. I mean, I wasn't there. I can only imagine what that must have been like. But hearing their stories, I'm just glad they trained and prepared for moments like that.
Okay, so the current building will remain a memorial, but that will be changed, the way that will look, and then the museum will be a full-blown museum at this new location. How big? Do we know how big it's going to be, square footage-wise, or?
We estimate somewhere around 30,000 square feet. The designs are still online. You can go look at them. They're amazing, and they give a lot more detail of how tall. Each one's different. So it's what we do know is we know what it will house, and what it will house will be not only the story of Pulse, and not just Pulse, but any LGBT bar around the world, because everyone will say, I've never been to Pulse, but I've been to Pulse, meaning in the LGBT community, gay bars are safe spaces. And so they know what that meant. So we want to talk about why Pulse was important to begin with in this day and age. We'll tell the story of June 12th, of course, and then the response from the world afterwards. It's not just our community, but the world's response, and the conversations that really Pulse has brought in the forefront. So we really want to make sure we use that platform for education. We will have classrooms there. We'll have an auditorium within there. We want to make a great community space for people, for other LGBT organizations, nonprofits who need, whether they need a meeting space or you want to do an event, and really create a great community center out of it as well.
Yeah. You know what amazes me, Barbara? Sometimes I really lose faith in the in the world around me. But then when I look at things that have happened around Pulse since the shooting, and I look at the outpouring and how much money has been given, to the cause, does that ever blow you away in that sense of how generous people can be when it comes to something this tragic?
I think when something this tragic happens, all you see is the hate, because all you see is the loss. Like, you see the hate of the perpetrator, and you can see what that meant. So you see this, you're living in this sorrow, sad place. But you have to remember that there's way more love and there's way more good than there is bad. And I think that Pulse was a true example of that. Like I said, not only in our community, where people were lining up to give blood or hand out waters, make sandwiches, deliver food. People were doing whatever they could. If you were a lawyer, you helped with legal documents. If you were a doctor, you helped with bills. If people did. If you were a songwriter, you wrote songs, poetry, art. No matter what you were doing as a human being, you did for people. You wanted to help. That happened here, and it happened around the world. And that is because this community has forever been just segregated. It's just been always kept separate and kept hidden or unaccepted. And so when you have a community like that has been so tragically affected, and to see the support that came out from it was truly amazing.
So do you think we're all coming around with the whole gay issue in this country? Are we? We've obviously made progress since you and I were young. We've major hurdles. I mean, do you feel like we've really made some serious progress? And is Pulse really a huge platform to that progress? Are we going to look back on this and go, gosh, this was a turning point in the LGBT community?
I don't know if Pulse was any catalyst for it. I mean, there have been activists doing this work for years. I mean, people have been, we stand on a lot of shoulders. The young gay community should learn their history and know whose shoulders they stand upon, because it has not been an easy fight for every single right that they have finally received. There's still a long way to go. And so I think we have to not be comfortable. And I'll use HIV as an example. We think, well, people aren't dying in epic numbers, so it's not an epidemic anymore. It's okay. It's not true. Florida has one of the highest new infection rates of HIV. We don't talk about that anymore. So,
you don't even hear about AIDS anymore. People do not even discuss it on the news or in the newspaper at all.
They don't, but they should be. Florida has one of the highest new infection rates in the country. So I know that people still die from AIDS, from complications of HIV. I know they can live longer. I also know those medications are expensive, and it doesn't mean you'll have a full life. So, I mean, there's still a lot happening in that realm. And so when we talk about LGBTQ rights and how far we've come, my point is that we think, oh, we've come so far, things are just easier. Black trans women are still being killed every day. Gay boys are still being bullied at school. I mean, it's still happening. It's just more, now that it's out in the open, you do have more people coming to defense, hopefully. It also depends on where you live in our country. Sometimes it depends on your faith. So I think that what has come out of Pulse and the shooting is that we now have this platform to talk about different topics that came out of that shooting. We can talk about gun violence. We can talk about terrorism. We can talk about bullying in a way. We talk about faith a lot. We talk about LGBTQ issues. We can talk about Latinx issues, immigration issues. I mean, there are so many conversations that started after Pulse because all of those things were factors. And so that really gave us a great platform, which is something we want to make sure we always we have at the museum.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to me in the last, I don't know, I might not have the amount of years correct, but 5 to 7 years, we really, as a country, we haven't solved the problems all the way. We still have a long way to go, but I feel like everyone is starting to come around, even politicians. I mean, finally coming around and at least not berating that community like we used to. You know, I don't hear the religious leaders berating those people like they used to, because when I was a kid, believe me, you heard all these things, you know, and it was, if you were a gay person back in the, 70s, 80s, and 90s, good luck, man. You know, you were, and I'm not, again, gay people probably can talk about this a lot better and what they face on a daily basis, but I feel like we're starting to come around as a country and go, what is the big, why are we picking on the gay people? What are we doing? You know, even if you don't agree with their life, just how's it affecting you? Who cares? Who cares what your neighbor is doing? I don't care what two heterosexual people are doing next to me, and I'd probably be more frightened what they're doing than, it's weird. It's a weird thing when you start wrapping your mind around, like, what are we bothered by, two people holding hands or something? Why does that freak us out?
I don't know. I can't answer a lot of those questions, but what I do know is that people are some are involved little by little, and I think it's day by day. I always say if you can change one heart and mind a day, you've done a good job, and hopefully that person will start and they'll spread the word. I think people fear what they don't know, and I think that ignorance sometimes is a scary place for people to be, and I think that that's a lot of times where it stems from. I also think when you were growing up in church and you would hear your preacher talk about homosexuality or sin or unacceptance, you were taught that. So it's
it's ingrained in you.
Yeah, you were taught it. So it was what you thought. And so thank God our children are growing up in a different time. I talk to my son all the time, who's in high school now, and I'll say, I'm working on these educational programs. We want to talk about talking about creating amity and friendships in the world, and what do you think the gap is at your school? And he looks at me all the time. He's like, Mom, the problem's not with us. The problem's with you people. Yeah. It's the adults. He's like, no, we young kids get it. I mean, he has gender fluid students in his class. He has LGBT people of every spectrum, and to him, he's like, no, it's not a big deal at my school. It's just not. And I'm like, oh, all right. And it's true that when I've met with other people from in the education system, they'll tell me, the gap might be with the faculty and staff because they don't know how to have these conversations, not because they don't accept homosexuality or LGBTQ people. It's because they don't know the language. They're afraid of messing up. If you don't know the right word, you're going to offend somebody. Will I be sued if I talk to this child about coming out to their parents, or so there's lots of ways that I think that we need to still educate people on a daily basis, mostly adults, on how to have these conversations, and it's almost like rewiring their brains. And just like you said, I mean, why do people care what goes on in my bedroom at home, and I shouldn't care what goes on in your bedroom at home? And so love is love, and people should be free to love who they want, and that expression should be equal for all. And so it's just part of being a human being. It's just part of being a human being. But I think that it spans, I think this idea of it just being an LGBT conversation is not true. I think it's about faith conversations. I think it's about understanding, accepting people's political views. We may not like them, but you can still like that person. We talk about not unfriending people all the time. It's like, I've unfriended so many people today because they don't share my view. Well, really, then how can you actually have a good conversation? How boring is the world if we only have conversations with people who are like-minded with us? What change will ever happen? What growth will you ever have? Whatever growth could they ever have? So, I mean, think back to the days when women, we couldn't even vote. And so now that we have the right to vote, right? But now we're still fighting for equal pay. So growth, yes. LGBT community growth, yes. But we're not done. And we're not done in many areas of life. So I just think that it's just a matter of paying attention and being a good steward of humanity and making sure you pass it on every single day.
Yeah, and it becomes generational, as you're mentioning to your child, because I have an 8-year-old. These conversations don't come up, but I can just tell he doesn't care. I just know.
Yeah.
I just absolutely know these issues are not going to be the same. So I think what happens with so many issues, a generation has to die off, they have to disappear, and then the new generation just completely has a different view of something. And I think whether it's women voting or the gay issue, I think it's going to be generational, where this next crop of people that will replace us will look back on this and go, what were we doing? What were they doing?
Right. I mean, that's what we talk about with the museum all the time. Our point is that in 50 years, we hope people are going to the museum going, why would they even need to have a gay bar? They had gay bars back then? Why was that, why did that even have to happen? Like, wow. And I think we do that a lot in the African American history, too, in our country. You look back at the lynching. If you ever went down to Montgomery, Alabama, went to the Lynching Memorial Museum, and you walk through there and you realized, have we come so far in that community? Yes, we have, but there is still so much farther to go. So there has been tons of growth, I think, in this generation, even in my time and in yours. So I just think we need to keep moving forward.
It's so true. I mean, think about it, Barbara. We used to have separate drinking fountains. We used to have separate bathrooms, and we look back at that now and just go, what? Like when you see video of that and you'll see a sign, colored person's bathroom, you go, was that in the United States? And it's like, oh yeah, it was in this particular town,
Mm-hmm.
And you just look back on that and you go, same thing with voting and other things. So I do think things will heal themselves. I think what's hard for all of us, and we're in instant generation now, we want everything immediate. It just doesn't happen fast enough. And unfortunately, people's rights are being held back, and they're being discriminated, they're being hurt, beat up, killed over this particular issue. And that's the sad part, Their lives have been changed because of this discrimination. So I do think Pulse is a big part of this change. I really do. And especially because someone came in and targeted a certain group of people. I mean, this person, there's so many different stories, and I don't want to get into it with you about, the shooter and that, but I mean, it's clear that he had a goal when he came in there, and I think he didn't like a certain group of people,
Well, actually, I will say this: the perpetrator did have a goal that evening. I firmly believe in my heart Pulse was not his target. I went to every day of that trial of his wife and learned about their, where had they been the week before, where they had been targeting, where they had walked through.
Did they talk about like Disney Springs at one time too?
Yes, and that's exactly where they were the week and before. They had never been to Pulse. They had never driven by Pulse. And so what happened was that when they had went where he had gone to his target, was spooked somehow, got in his car, and he just Googled Orlando nightclubs. And Pulse just happened to come up at the top of the list. And so...
And he had been there before, though, no?
There's no record that he'd ever been to Pulse.
So those are false reports then?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think everything was flying around. It was like, I think I've seen him before. He looked familiar. He wasn't from here. They could never place him here, even, by his pings on his phone. They did completely track him the weekend before and could track where they had been. So... it wasn't that the LGBT community was exactly targeted. But what I can tell you is that he was in that building for 11 minutes before he went outside and strapped on his guns. So he knew who he was going to kill. He didn't discriminate against it, but he knew exactly where he was and who he was going to kill. But and I'm sure in his faith, that might seem like an okay thing to do. I'm pretty sure that there's LGBTQ community was not accepted in his faith as well, but Pulse was not his target. It's not where he left when he left his house that evening, where he knew he was going.
Did you learn, was there any conflict in his head from that he was gay then, or no? That's
No.
false too.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I've never had any proof of that. I did not come out in the trial. Again, the trial was against his wife,
Right.
so I'm not sure how much of that would have come out or not come out. But he wasn't on trial; she was.
I thought maybe from, again, bad reporting, fake news or
Yeah.
whatever, we kind of understood that he was conflicted, and he had been on apps, they said, and different websites, gay websites, looking for partners, and that wasn't true.
I don't know. I mean, I remember reading all those reports, but I personally don't know that. I'm not on the apps. Wasn't me who saw them. So, I mean, I just can tell you from what I've learned through this process that, not that I know of.
Did you get to know any of any people connected to him at all over time?
No.
No, they never reached out to
No.
you or came to you. Yeah, yeah. So how is Barbara doing these days? Man, oh man, you have had just a wild ride in this. A totally innocent business owner thrust into this. What is the moral or the lesson to learn from all this? What have you learned in life?
Well, can't prepare for something like this. You can only do the best you can. I think that you have a choice. You either sink or you swim. I think it's that way with any kind of trauma or anything that you've ever been through in your lifetime. You have a choice. You can either sink or swim with it. And so we chose to swim. And we chose to what we thought was the right thing to do with the property and with the space. And so we just continue to do that work every day. And that's what I've been doing. It's not always easy. Sometimes you question yourself. But this is a new path right now.
Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently? I mean, in the whole situation?
I don't know. I think I don't have any feelings like that because I constantly look forward. I don't really ever look backwards. I know that backwards was a really dark, bad place, and so I strive every day to stay out of that hole. And so I really want to look back, but I think that everyone did the best they could, and I think I did the best I could too.
Was it weird during that process? I guess you met a couple presidents, haven't you? Did you meet them? Were they
President Obama?
Yeah,
and Vice
you were
President
there, right?
when they came. Mm-hmm.
Was that weird? Did you talk? Or was it very quick and?
They spent. We had private time.
You did, okay.
Not just me. There was a room. They met with all the families and survivors that they could in a private room before they went out and laid their flowers and paid their respects. I made sure my affected staff were there. I personally did not. It wasn't about me. So
no.
For me, it was. I just made sure I got everyone there, and all I remember about that time is making sure that everyone on my staff got their chance to shake hands and hug and talk to them. I know we took a photo, but it really, I was more concerned. I think I spoke with Ms. Valerie Jarrett at the time because she was like, "How can I help you?" I'm like, "I'm worried about the building. I'm worried about what's in there. Like, is it going to be hazmated? How's it coming back to me?" Like, I was just, I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't. No one was communicating to me what the next steps were, and so it was a really strange time for me. But my main focus at that time was, taking care of the staff I knew needed help, and so I considered myself more of an organizer then.
And that's the right thing to do, and you're such a pro. But that's got to be weird. Be sitting in a room and you look across and there's President Obama. He's here because of your business. Like, isn't that weird or no?
I didn't even think about it.
No,
I didn't. I was just making sure everyone got what they needed.
That's surreal.
So, I was really glad, and I have to tell you, he and Vice President were just. I've never seen such a beautiful display of humanity ever. I mean, they spent so much time with each person. It wasn't like they just walked by and shook hands and hugged. They spent so much time with every family member and survivor there, and they had survivors in hospital beds wheeled down in there. And so it was just amazing to see how genuine they were. If they had families who weren't here, they FaceTimed with them. They spent way more time than they were supposed to spend in that room. with everyone, but they did it, and it was really just the most beautiful display of humanity I think I've ever witnessed in my lifetime.
That is nice to actually hear that, because you think of it like, okay, they'd click a couple pictures and they'd actually listen to their stories no matter how long and drawn out they were.
They did.
Wow. And I forget, was Hillary here at the time too, or did she come? Or
I believe she came and paid a visit, and she visited the site. I saw her there.
You did? Okay. And then Trump came too, and no, he didn't come. I thought
No, President Trump did not.
Okay. I couldn't remember the timeline on that. Anybody that came, other obviously the families. I've been out there, and I know it's been family members that have been out there, and you just sit there and so I can imagine how you felt, being who you are, and you just kind of stand back and you go, oh my God, they're looking at that picture. That is probably their friends, someone they know. Is there anyone that came that really impressed you? And I don't know, other than just...
I think what's interesting is that politicians, of course, have come by, and celebrities have come by, which I find really interesting. And what I find most interesting about, everyone's like, oh, it's making it into some sort of tourist destination, which it's not. What I find interesting about the celebrities who have come, they never call us and say they're coming. It is never a photo op at all. They come on their own time. They do their own thing. We find out afterwards. We'll find out, someone will be like, do you know that Tyler Perry was just down? I'm like, no idea. It's not like he calls and says, hey, I'm coming up there. Can someone give me a
personal tour?
They do not. I mean, this is something they're doing because it's important to them.
Well, people may not realize how it's set up. You literally can just park your car and walk right up.
You do.
Yeah.
It's an open plaza. And so I also get amazed. We have a kiosk on site, and people can leave little messages and put their zip codes in. And we wanted to see where people are coming from. It's amazing to see people come from around the world. And we have docents on site who will answer questions. And so they get to hear the stories of where people came from. And so we had this one family, a man, and he was flying. He had to go to a wedding in Daytona. But instead of flying to Daytona, he says, no, I wanted to fly to Orlando. I rented a car because I wanted to come here first. And then I'm driving to Daytona. You've had families who are here on vacation, but they want to bring their children to the site to talk about it. So it really is amazing to see and hear the stories of what brings people there. I mean, we have over 300 people a day there without anything to see except to pay their respects. And that's what they're coming to do. They come to bear witness.
Yeah. Here's where I think we're headed as a society. I want to see what your thoughts are. In fact, I bloviate about this all the time. In the news a while back, what happened in Las Vegas, obviously horrible. You can relate to it. They're settling on like $800 million or something for the families. And anyways, I've watched all the security footage. It's all online of the shooter at Mandalay Bay, step by step, everything he did. And I've watched it meticulously, and I look at it and I go, this is what I feel. I look at this and go, yeah, what would you want security to do? In other words, he'd leave, he'd go to his house, but they don't know where he went. And then he'd pull up in a car. You know how big a Las Vegas casino is. It's just another person pulling up. It's not like you go, oh, there's Randy again. Nobody knows who you are. So whether I've brought in another bag, you would not know that. I don't care what anyone says. You just would be looking for suspicious activity. Okay, so anyways, I think we're headed to a society where I'm going to go to Target, I'm going to go to a bagel store, I'm going to go to a car dealership, and when you pull up, you are going to hand over your keys, everything. You're going to go through an x-ray machine, and we are going to turn into a police state because everyone is going to have to inspect everyone before they come into your business. What say you about that? Do you think we're headed that way?
I'm hoping we're not heading that way. Never thought about it like that.
Really? I think about this all the time, everywhere I go. When I go to the airport, I think this is just the beginning. I really do.
Well, remember, airport security happened after 9/11.
Yep.
But it was heightened after 9/11, and which it should have been. Hindsight's always 20/20. Like you always think, oh, like those people who were watching those tapes now that you sat and watched them. Of course, the security guards are thinking, how did we miss that? And you're right. It probably was different people on different shifts. They weren't clocking that. That didn't seem. So I understand that it's easy to look back and say what we should have done. But I think this generation is more about solving the problem than getting to where you're talking about. I mean, you have a huge generation of activists, and you have a huge generation of thinkers and humanitarians who are really willing to work on why this is happening to begin with. And it's not just a gun issue. I talk about all the time, do we have a gun problem? Sure we do. We have a violence problem. I believe if you, if you look at the studies of when there was the assault ban rifle, was, we were not allowed to have any of those, what the deaths were then and what they are now, numbers don't lie. I also believe even if you took away assault rifles or assault weapons of any kind and the magazines that go with them and all the bump stocks that go with them, everything that could convert a gun, right? If you could take those things away, you still have bombs. You still have people driving trucks down pedestrian streets, and you still have planes. So I think that it's not that we have become what you're describing, that we need to become that, because that won't stop some of the other stuff either. You need to fix the problem of why it's happening to begin with, and it really becomes with divide, and it comes with people's what they're carrying around, whether it be their fear or their ignorance, or whether their culture is full of violence. There's more root issues. I don't see us going to a police state. I think I see us working towards a solution so we don't have to get to that kind of.
I think you're wrong, Barbara. I think we're going to turn into a police state, because always the solution is to everything is like with Las Vegas. Oh, he should have checked his bags. There should be an X-ray machine at every hotel, and we're not going to get into this with attorney. This is what the attorneys say. Oh, you didn't have 900 security guards walking in. You didn't have an X-ray machine. You didn't have this. I think this is where every business is going to have to lead to in order to reach compliance with their insurance company. I
mean, I would hope not, and I would hate to think that humanity goes that far, but we'll see. Yeah, hopefully it's not in my lifetime.
Well, I hope not too, and I hope it is more precise, that we figure out why people have this anger and hate inside of them, and why they react to that. So, I mean,
I think think back when you were growing up and I was growing up. I remember if we got in a fight with somebody, went home, you wrote a nasty note, or you spread a rumor, and why how did it go from that to going home to getting your parents' gun and going back and shooting up your school? When did that shift happen? And so, what's changed?
What's your view on social media? You're kind of on that. You didn't grow up with it, so
yeah, I didn't grow up with it.
Yeah,
I try to stay off of it as much as possible. It could be very slippery slope into a lot of emotions, and so I just. Do
you use it?
It's a necessary evil, yeah.
Yeah. Are you more of like a Facebook person and with your friends?
I have something on everything, but I don't go. Mostly, I used to get these apps because my kids were on them, so I used to have to monitor my children. Like I got Instagram because my daughter got Instagram. My son has Snapchat, and so I have Snapchat. Do I know how to use Snapchat? No, I do not. But I have them. But it's just not part of my everyday.
Yeah, and did you get a lot of weird comments and stuff over the time, or still to this day?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't read it either then. No. I hear a lot of people that have really been in the limelight, people like yourself who have gotten into some sort of situation where they don't even read stuff.
Yeah, no.
It's just not worth it. There's so many crazy people leaving crazy comments and thoughts, and the best thing to do is just ignore it. Just pretend it doesn't exist.
Yes.
Anything I'm missing?
I don't know.
You want to talk about the Bahamas?
It'd be nice to go back, but no trips planned. So.
Are you and your husband living a good life? Are you guys trying to?
We're trying to put our life back together.
Yeah.
It was something people don't realize, that we lost a business, and so we lost an income, and we have a mortgage, and we had a family to feed, just like everybody else does. So we were in a certain life plan, and our life plan was changed dramatically. And so I think we have learned to. It's been 3 years. We've adjusted our life pretty well, and just trying to figure out where to go from here.
Can you guys see yourself opening up another type of business, or?
I don't know. We talk about it some days yes, some days no.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're tired. We're old.
No, you're not old. You're not old at all. No, you've got a lot of spirit and gumption, and I can tell you're a go-getter. I don't think that at all.
Well, I am tired. So,
Well, that's just getting older.
Yeah.
That's why I drink a lot of coffee.
There
And that's
you
the only
go.
thing. I could not live without my coffee. It's just impossible. I need that little boost in the morning, you know?
No caffeine here. Haven't had caffeine.
No?
No. I drink coffee all day long, but it's always decaf. Yeah.
Do you drink alcohol at all?
I have a lot of wine.
Wine?
Yeah, wine's good.
You look like, I could see you drinking. Yeah, women
Glass of
women
wine.
like wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good glass of wine.
Yeah. I don't. I need that caffeine, and even I still do like the energy drinks and alcohol. Yeah, is that crazy?
Yeah, a little bit.
Really? Mm-hmm. But it keeps me going.
All right. If it works for you, no judgment here. I know no judgment.
Barbara, you're an amazing woman. My heart goes out to you. Hang in there. You are a fighter. I think you have done so much for the LGBT community and Orlando and Florida and the world. That is my view, and I totally believe it. And thanks for coming in and chatting.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right, we're out of here.
No more Roach on Florida TV.